Imagine being born into a classroom where the walls don't echo with questions, but with commands, where curiosity isn't a spark to be nurtured, but a flame to be smothered. In North Korea, education begins before a child can even speak, because here, learning isn't about discovery, it's about devotion. From the moment a child first opens their eyes, the state begins its work. It teaches them who to love, who to fear, and who to become, not a student, not an individual, but a believer. Every morning in Pyongyang and in the smallest villages hidden between the mountains, a bell rings, not for education, but indoctrination. Rows of children stand in perfect formation, their tiny hands clutching red scarves, their eyes lifted toward portraits of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il. The room is silent, except for the rhythmic sound of recitation, lines of ideology memorized by heart. Thank you, great leader. Thank you, dear leader. The children bow, not to a teacher, but to two men who have been dead for decades, yet whose gaze never leaves the room. The first lesson a North Korean child learns is not how to read or write, it's how to worship. Their alphabet begins with the names of the Kims, their songs praise the Workers' Party, their stories speak of American devils, Japanese invaders, and the eternal love of their leaders who bring light to the mountains and rice to the fields. Each child learns to draw the Korean peninsula, but always divided, with the northern half shining bright and the south covered in darkness. Every page of every textbook whispers the same truth. Knowledge is not yours. It belongs to the state. By the age of 6, most children in the capital have already joined the Korean Children's Union, a mandatory organization where loyalty is measured not by grades, but by obedience. There are badges, uniforms, slogans. The children smile for photographs as they pledge their lives to the supreme leader. It looks innocent, almost patriotic. But behind the smiles lies something more complex, a system that turns education into faith. Every lesson, every story, every word is a tool, a way to shape the perfect citizen, one who will never ask why. Inside the classrooms, teachers stand like priests of ideology. Their blackboards are altars. They speak with the same tone used in state propaganda, precise, emotional, absolute. When they write the name of Kim Il-sung, they never use ordinary chalk. They use red ink, the color of reverence. When they mention him, the class must stand. Some children tremble, afraid of saying something wrong. Even a small mistake, a mispronounced title, a forgotten honorific, can bring shame to an entire family. Education in North Korea is not just about learning, it's about survival. Parents whisper at night, warning their children to be careful with their words. Never repeat what we say at home. Because even inside a classroom, there are ears. The government encourages children to report those who speak ill of the regime, and sometimes they do. A teacher once told a student that life in the countryside was hard. The next morning, she disappeared. The children came to class and found her desk empty. No one asked where she went. They all knew the answer, without a word being spoken. Imagine growing up where school is a mirror of the entire nation, structured, silent, and sacred. There are no discussions, no debates. The concept of critical thinking doesn't exist. Students memorize revolutionary history instead of mathematics. They study the lives of the Kim family instead of world geography. Even science is rewritten. Textbooks claim that Kim Jong-il invented the hamburger, that Kim Il-sung made rain fall during a drought, that Kim Jong-un can control the weather. These aren't mistakes. They're deliberate illusions designed to make the impossible seem ordinary. Every subject is political. History lessons begin with the Japanese occupation and end with the eternal triumph of the Kims. Literature classes analyze poems written in praise of the leader. Even art classes teach students to paint smiling soldiers and glowing factories. Every exam is another chance to prove loyalty. The best students don't necessarily have the highest marks. They have the purest hearts. And purity, in this system, means faith without question. But not all schools are equal. The education system is divided, like the country itself, by loyalty and privilege. Children of the elite, those who live in Pyongyang or belong to the ruling class, attend special institutions. Their classrooms are equipped with computers, projectors, even foreign textbooks carefully edited by the state. They are groomed to become diplomats, scientists, or military officers. They learn just enough about the outside world to serve the regime, but never enough to question it. Meanwhile, children in rural areas, especially those from families with tainted backgrounds, descendants of so-called traitors or defectors, attend decaying schools with no electricity, no heat, and no future. They learn the same slogans but with empty stomachs. Education in North Korea is meant to be universal, but it's also a filter. From kindergarten to university, every child is evaluated not only for academic performance, but for ideological purity. This evaluation is recorded in something called the Songbun system, a social classification that determines your worth as a citizen. It's based on your family history, political loyalty, and the perceived purity of your bloodline. If your grandfather fought for the revolution, your path is open. If he didn't, your dreams are sealed before you can dream them. A child can study hard, obey every rule, but if their songbun is low, they'll never attend Pyongyang University. They'll be sent to work in the fields, or in factories, or in mines. The regime calls it meritocracy. In truth, it's destiny written by ancestry. Inside the universities, the illusion deepens. Pyongyang's Kim Il-sung University, the most prestigious in the nation, looks impressive on the outside. Towering buildings, manicured gardens, banners of revolutionary slogans. But the subjects taught inside are narrow, isolated, and infused with propaganda. Students study Juche philosophy, the ideology of self-reliance. They analyze the works of the Kim family like sacred scriptures. They learn engineering, yes, but only for military or state-controlled purposes. Foreign literature is banned. Western science is filtered. Internet access is nearly non-existent. Instead, there's a closed intranet called Kwangmyong, where only state-approved content exists. It's a mirror of the real internet, stripped of truth, filled with devotion. Teachers, too, live under constant watch. They are both educators and informants. Every few weeks, they must write reports about their students, noting not only academic progress but behavior, family attitudes, and loyalty to the regime. One wrong word in those reports can destroy a future. One missing praise for the leader can ruin a career. To survive, teachers exaggerate their devotion. They decorate classrooms with more portraits, lead students in louder chants, and compete to display the greatest loyalty. In North Korea, even sincerity has become a performance. Imagine a child growing up under this system. They see the world through a narrow window. They believe their country is the greatest on earth, that their leader loves them more than a parent, and that the outside world lives in misery. They learn that America is a place of poverty, that South Koreans envy them, that their nation alone stands pure and righteous, and when they ask, "If our country is so great, why is there no light at night?" they are told, "Because we are saving power for our soldiers." They nod and believe it, because to doubt is dangerous. To question is treason. Education in North Korea doesn't end in the classroom. It continues in the streets, in the fields, in every public space. Loudspeakers broadcast lessons from dawn until night. Television programs reinforce ideology. Films portray foreign enemies defeated by North Korean heroes. Even playgrounds are built beneath murals of the Kim family. Every environment becomes a teacher, every citizen a student. The entire nation is a classroom, and the lesson never ends. And yet, despite all this, there are moments, small, fragile moments, when the illusion cracks. A curious child finds a foreign object washed up by the river, a South Korean candy wrapper, a Chinese radio signal, a whispered rumor about life beyond the mountains. These fragments of reality ignite something forbidden: doubt. Some students secretly question what they've been taught. They dream of seeing the world, of reading real books, of hearing music not written by the state. But dreams in North Korea are like smoke. You can't hold them for long before they vanish. Even so, the regime knows the power of curiosity. That's why it fears education as much as it controls it. Knowledge, if left unguarded, can unravel obedience. So every textbook, every teacher, every classroom is a fortress. A wall between truth and thought. The students inside don't realize they're prisoners because their prison was built with words. And words in North Korea are sacred weapons. As night falls, the loudspeakers go silent. The students walk home along dark streets, lit only by the glow of portraits hanging in every house. Inside, they open their notebooks and write essays praising their leader. Their handwriting is neat, their tone devout. Their parents watch quietly, knowing that a single careless phrase could mean disaster. Outside, the wind moves through the empty playgrounds, the same wind that crosses the border, carrying whispers from the world they will never know. Education in North Korea isn't about the pursuit of truth. It's about the preservation of control. The regime doesn't teach children how to think. It teaches them what to think. It replaces questions with answers, curiosity with obedience, and imagination with fear. It creates citizens who can recite entire speeches by heart, but have never heard a real debate. People who can describe the achievements of their leader but not their own dreams. And so, generation after generation, the system renews itself. Each child becomes the echo of the last. Each classroom another stage in the theater of loyalty. And the more the world advances, the deeper North Korea retreats, not because it can't evolve, but because knowledge is the one thing that could make the regime crumble. And they know it. That's why the education system is not just secret, it's sacred. A machine of faith disguised as learning. But in every machine there's a flaw. Somewhere in a forgotten classroom in the countryside, a child looks out the window and wonders what lies beyond the hills. Somewhere in a dim dormitory, a student whispers the forbidden word, freedom. And though the regime cannot see it yet, those whispers may one day become something louder, something unstoppable. Because even in North Korea, the most controlled society on earth, curiosity cannot be erased. It can only be delayed. Morning begins with a song, the same one that is played every day for decades. It echoes through the loudspeakers hidden in every school courtyard, every dormitory, every factory. The melody is simple, but the words are heavy with devotion. We have nothing to envy. In North Korea, these are not lyrics. They are law. And for millions of children, they are the first words they learn by heart. Before mathematics, before history, before anything else. The classrooms open with ritual precision. The students bow toward the portraits of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il that hang above every blackboard, framed in gold, their faces eternally smiling. These portraits must be spotless, cleaned daily, never touched, never smudged. If a speck of dust is found on them, the teacher may be reprimanded. If a tear falls on them during a flood or fire, the owner of the house may be imprisoned. The act of cleaning them is not maintenance, it's worship. And this is the foundation of the North Korean education system, the sacredness of obedience. Inside the classroom, a teacher stands with perfect posture. She doesn't begin the lesson until the portraits are acknowledged. She speaks with clarity and emotion, but never warmth. Her job is not to inspire, it's to reinforce. Our great leader liberated Korea from the Japanese. Our dear leader defended us from the American aggressors. Every sentence begins with reverence and ends with fear. The students repeat after her, their voices rising in unison. This is not a school, it's a rehearsal. A performance of loyalty staged daily across an entire nation. But to understand the full scope of North Korea's education system, we must look beyond the classroom to the structure that orchestrates it all. It begins with the Ministry of Education, but above it sits something greater. The Propaganda and Agitation Department. Its name alone reveals the truth. Education is not about knowledge, it's about agitation, the shaping of hearts and minds through repetition until belief becomes instinct. The department oversees every textbook, every lesson plan, every examination. No sentence is printed without approval. Every illustration, every example, every story must align with the narrative of eternal loyalty. Even the youngest children are taught history as if it were myth. They learn that Kim Il-sung was born under a bright star, that flowers bloomed when he cried, that he could shoot perfectly as a child. These tales are not symbolic. They are treated as literal truth. Teachers recite them with trembling voices, and students write essays describing how they felt when they first learned about the miracles of the Kims. There is no space for doubt. A child who laughs at these stories doesn't understand humor. They understand danger. At the age of 12, education becomes even more controlled. Students begin to study revolutionary history, a subject that fills nearly a third of their curriculum. In these classes, they learn about the heroic struggle against Japanese imperialists, the betrayal of the South, and the divine wisdom of the Kim bloodline. Lessons are illustrated with dramatic paintings and emotional language. The message is simple. The Kims are not leaders. They are destiny. Without them, Korea would not exist. Science, too, is rewritten to fit ideology. Biology textbooks explain that the Kims possessed extraordinary mental and physical abilities beyond human comprehension. Geography lessons describe North Korea as the most fertile, self-reliant land on Earth. In chemistry, students learn how fertilizers created under Kim Il-sung's guidance saved the nation. Physics lessons sometimes include references to how Kim Jong-il developed revolutionary theories of energy. These are not metaphors, they are printed facts in a system where truth serves politics, not evidence. Every year, students take part in what's called ideological study sessions. These sessions are not exams, they are confessions. In them, students must admit their ideological mistakes, perhaps a moment of distraction during a speech, a thought that lacked revolutionary enthusiasm, a time they failed to smile when the leader's image appeared on television. These self-criticisms are written in notebooks and submitted to teachers. The students then critique one another, repeating the cycle of fear and confession until guilt becomes routine. In elite institutions such as the Mangyongdae Revolutionary School, this process is intensified. These schools are reserved for the children of war heroes, high-ranking officials, and trusted revolutionaries. Here the grooming begins early. Students wear military uniforms, march in formation, and are taught that their destiny is to defend the supreme leader with their lives. Their dormitories are adorned with portraits and slogans. Every morning begins with a chant of gratitude. Every evening ends with a song of devotion. These students will one day become the generals, diplomats, and scientists of the regime, the loyal core who keep the machinery running. For those outside Pyongyang, life is different. The schools are old, the windows cracked, the textbooks decades out of date. In rural areas, children study in freezing classrooms without heat, their breath visible in the air. Yet even there, the portraits hang, clean and untouchable. Even there, the lessons remain the same. The great leader is the son of our nation. The American imperialists want to destroy our happiness. We must sacrifice everything for our homeland. The message is universal, even when the chalk runs out and the lights go dark. But what truly separates North Korea's education system from the rest of the world is the concept of total life integration. Learning does not stop after school. It continues in youth organizations, in weekend volunteer programs, in factories, in military service. The moment a child graduates, they enter another form of training, ideological labor. They are sent to the countryside to reform their character through work. It's not punishment, it's normalization. The state believes that physical labor reinforces moral purity. So a student who once recited revolutionary poems in class now carries stones to build roads. The system ensures that the lessons never fade. They are burned into muscle and bone. The curriculum itself is frozen in time. While the rest of the world's education evolves with technology and science, North Korea's remains static, deliberately so. Its purpose is not progress but preservation. Every lesson is designed to maintain a single narrative, that the outside world is corrupt and inferior, that the leader's wisdom is eternal, that unity under him is the only path to survival. To achieve this, even the language is shaped. Words like freedom and individualism are rarely used, except in negative contexts. Students learn that these ideas are poisonous, tools used by the West to destroy moral order. Instead, they are taught Hush, the doctrine of self-reliance, as a spiritual truth. Huche is not just an ideology, it's a substitute for religion. It teaches that the leader embodies the soul of the nation, that his thoughts are perfect guidance, that his will is moral law. Children grow up believing that to disobey him is not just treason, it's sin. The education system ensures that every concept, every moral decision, every emotional instinct is tied to this faith. It replaces the idea of God with the face of Kim Il-sung. In universities, the indoctrination deepens. Students at Kim Il-sung University, Kim Chaek University of Technology, and other elite institutions undergo weekly loyalty lectures. Attendance is mandatory. In these sessions, professors read from the works of the Kims as if reading scripture. Students take notes with reverence. Afterwards, they discuss how to apply the teachings to their studies. A lecture about physics may turn into a sermon on loyalty. A discussion about agriculture becomes an analysis of how huge farming methods surpass all foreign models. Even foreign languages are taught within ideological boundaries. English classes use textbooks filled with propaganda examples. Our country is beautiful. Our leader loves children. American soldiers are cruel. Students memorize these sentences, unaware of how distorted their vocabulary has become. For them, English is not a bridge to the world. It's another tool to prove devotion. The state's control over education is reinforced through constant surveillance. Every school has political officers who monitor teachers and students alike. They attend meetings, collect reports, and ensure that no unauthorized information enters the classroom. If a teacher is caught with foreign material, a South Korean song, a Chinese magazine, even a word of sympathy for defectors, they disappear. Sometimes quietly, sometimes publicly. Fear is the most effective teacher in North Korea. But in the age of global connectivity, cracks have begun to form. Along the Chinese border, smuggled USB drives and DVDs have made their way into the hands of students. On these devices are South Korean dramas, Western films, even educational materials. A handful of young people have seen the world beyond their borders, a glimpse of light in the endless dark. For them, the contradiction is unbearable. They return to class and pretend to believe, but something inside has shifted. The spell of indoctrination weakens once you've seen real color. Yet even this awakening is dangerous. If a student is caught with foreign media, the punishment is severe. Sometimes imprisonment, sometimes forced labor, sometimes execution. Entire families can suffer for the curiosity of one child. So they hide their discoveries like forbidden treasures. They share them in whispers, in secret gatherings after nightfall. A handful of words, a single image becomes a spark. But sparks are fragile in a land where the wind itself is watched. The more one studies the North Korean education system, the clearer it becomes. This is not just schooling. It's social engineering at its purest. It produces citizens who not only obey, but believe. And belief is far more powerful than fear. A frightened man may rebel. A believer never will. That's why the system is so intricate, so pervasive. It ensures that even in the privacy of thought, there is no escape. For the regime, this is its greatest victory, to transform knowledge into devotion and devotion into silence. But silence has a cost. Behind the facade of perfect order, the nation is slowly starving for truth. Teachers who once believed now hesitate before repeating propaganda. Students who once chanted with pride now look away. The cracks are invisible from the outside, but inside they're spreading. Because the truth once glimpsed cannot be unlearned. And somewhere, in a dim classroom beneath the watchful eyes of portraits, a teacher pauses mid-sentence. For the first time, she wonders whether she is teaching children or betraying them. There comes a point in every North Korean student's life when learning ceases to feel like an education and begins to feel like confinement. It happens quietly, not through rebellion, but through realization. A moment when a child's eyes wander from the blackboard to the window, and for the first time they notice the emptiness outside, the grey streets, the silent classmates, the air heavy with obedience. It's not what's being taught that shapes them. It's what's missing. Questions, curiosity, wonder. The human spirit, all replaced by ritual. From the age of 16, most students are expected to devote part of their schooling to what the regime calls patriotic labor. On paper, it's meant to strengthen the revolutionary spirit. In truth, it's unpaid, forced work, long days in the fields, factories, or construction sites. The young carry cement bags, plant rice, dig ditches. They sing patriotic songs as they work, watched over by local party officials. The songs are meant to keep morale high, but behind every verse lies exhaustion. Teachers who accompany the students often collapse beside them, silently enduring the same hardships. This is where education becomes survival training, not for war but for obedience. Those born to families with tainted bloodlines, descendants of supposed traitors, religious families, or defectors, face even greater barriers. Their songbun, the invisible ranking system that determines one's place in society, shadows every step they take. These children know, even before adolescence, that no matter how well they perform, they will never rise above their lineage. The elite attend schools with computers and new textbooks. The rest study in cold classrooms with outdated maps, their hands numb from the winter air. Some write with pencils so short they cut their fingers. Others never graduate. Punishment in the North Korean education system isn't always physical. It's psychological. When a student fails to show sufficient loyalty, the teacher might not beat them. Instead, they'll be forced to stand before the class and confess their ideological weakness. Their peers will then take turns denouncing them, each eager to prove their own devotion. He lacked revolutionary enthusiasm. She hesitated to clap for the great leader. He spoke softly during the anthem. The accused nods, apologizes, sometimes cries, then they promise to do better. It's theater, but the audience believes it. Fear is contagious. One story, whispered among defectors, tells of a young girl named Hye-jin. She was 12 when her teacher caught her sketching in her notebook, not propaganda art, but a bird, drawn from imagination. The teacher asked her why she drew it. "Because I wanted it to be free," she said. The next day she was gone. Her classmates never saw her again. Her desk remained empty for months, then was quietly removed. The lesson was clear. In North Korea, imagination itself is an act of defiance. The curriculum grows darker as students age. By high school, they're no longer just reciting the past. They're rehearsing the future. Boys are taught the basics of military discipline, marching, marksmanship, the handling of weapons. Girls learn how to care for wounded soldiers, how to maintain morale, how to serve. Every classroom becomes a miniature barracks. Even physical education is militarized, filled with drills and chants of loyalty. The message is repeated daily. The enemy is everywhere. That enemy, according to every textbook, is America. Teachers describe it as a land of starvation and chaos, where children are homeless, where families are torn apart by violence. Pictures in the books show caricatures of starving American children begging for food, while North Korean students share their abundance. It's absurd, but for a child who has never seen the outside world, it's all they know. To them, this version of reality is complete. The outside world is not merely unknown, it's evil. And so they grow up believing that their suffering is a privilege, that their hunger is a badge of honor. The propaganda doesn't end at the classroom door. When students return home, their lessons continue through state television. Educational programs show dramatizations of loyal students who sacrifice everything for the nation. In one film, a boy reports his own father to the authorities after overhearing him criticize the regime. The boy is celebrated as a hero, the father vanishes. These stories are fictional, but their purpose is real. They teach the ultimate lesson. Loyalty to the leader surpasses loyalty to blood. For the teachers, the burden is immense. Many entered the profession believing they would shape young minds. Instead, they became instruments of control. A teacher's life is as monitored as their students. They must attend ideological retraining every month, sessions where they memorize new slogans, watch propaganda films, and publicly confess their doubts. These meetings are not optional. Absence raises suspicion. Even illness is viewed with distrust. Some teachers keep diaries not to remember their lives, but to maintain the illusion of faith. They write lines of praise for the regime in case their journals are ever inspected. In North Korea, privacy is treason. Among the elite schools, a different kind of lesson unfolds. The privileged students learn foreign languages and sciences to serve as the country's bridge to the outside world, or its shield against it. They study at institutions like the Pyongyang University of Science and Technology, funded partially by foreign donors but tightly controlled by the government. The professors are often foreigners themselves, brought in to teach English, computing, or business. But every interaction is monitored. The students are forbidden from asking personal questions. Their internet access is filtered through an intranet that simulates global connectivity without ever granting it. The illusion is perfect. The students feel connected, but they are not. They live inside a bubble within a bubble. And yet, even among them, disillusionment grows. A handful of these elite students, children of generals, party officials, diplomats, have defected over the years. Their stories, once they reach the outside world, are haunting. They speak of dormitories where whispers carried more danger than weapons, of lectures that ended with collective oaths of loyalty, of friendships that dissolved under the weight of suspicion. One defector recalled how in university a friend disappeared after being caught with a foreign magazine. The next day, his photograph was erased from the class bulletin board. "We never spoke of him again," she said. "It was as if he had never existed." The emotional cost of this system is immeasurable. North Korean students are taught to love their leader more than their parents. They're told that the state is their true family, that it will feed them, clothe them, protect them. When famine strikes, and it often does, the contradiction becomes unbearable. Children recite slogans about abundance, while their stomachs twist with hunger. Teachers tell them to be grateful while their siblings starve. Still, the performance continues. No one dares to break the illusion. During the 1990s famine, known internally as the Arduous March, hundreds of thousands of children perished. Yet schools remained open. Students were told that their suffering was proof of devotion. Those who fainted in class were carried out, not as victims, but as martyrs. "Study harder," their teachers said, "so the great leader may smile upon you." In that silence, broken only by the sound of wind against cracked windows, the essence of the North Korean education system revealed itself. It was never about knowledge, it was about faith in suffering. The propaganda reaches its most intense form in what are called revolutionary history museums, institutions every student must visit at least once. Inside, there are life-size dioramas of Kim Il-sung's childhood, battlefields reconstructed with glowing lights, and mannequins of the Kims surrounded by children. The guides speak in soft, reverent tones. Students bow before each exhibit. Some cry, others force themselves to. Cameras watch, noting who weeps and who does not. Emotion, too, is graded. Yet even within this carefully orchestrated devotion, cracks continue to appear. A few teachers, quietly and cautiously, try to give their students glimpses of real education. A math teacher in Hamhung once taught her class about negative numbers by secretly using examples from a smuggled South Korean workbook. A biology teacher in Chongjin whispered that DNA, not the leader's will, determines human traits. These are small acts, invisible revolutions, and each carries risk enough to destroy entire families. It's in these fragile moments of defiance that the true humanity of the North Korean education system reveals itself, not in the lessons of obedience, but in the tiny acts of resistance that survive beneath them. A student who dares to ask, why? A teacher who dares to pause before repeating a lie. These gestures may never be recorded in history books, but they exist, and that existence alone is a quiet rebellion. At night, the sound of propaganda fades, replaced by whispers. Students lie in dormitories, the air heavy with the scent of damp walls and fear. Some close their eyes and dream of the stories they've been forbidden to read. Others imagine a world beyond the mountains, a world they can't name, but feel. The teachers sleep uneasily, knowing tomorrow they will repeat the same lies, not because they believe them, but because the alternative is unthinkable. In the stillness of that night, beneath portraits illuminated by dim light bulbs, education has completed its transformation. It no longer teaches, it controls. It no longer enlightens, it imprisons. The purpose of this system is not to create minds, it's to erase them. And yet, within that erasure, something flickers. The same human instinct that once built civilizations, painted stars on cave walls, and sought to understand the unknown. Curiosity. It survives in whispers, in dreams, in the silent rebellion of thought. And though the regime has spent generations trying to crush it, it cannot extinguish what it cannot see. In the heart of this darkness, Education becomes both the weapon and the wound. There is a silence that hangs over North Korean schools, not the silence of discipline, but of something deeper, older, more engineered. It's the silence of control perfected. Every child who walks through the gate of a school passes through an invisible threshold where the state, not the family, becomes the guardian of their soul. But behind this perfection lies something hidden, something the regime tries to keep unseen even from its own people, the true machinery of its educational empire. To the outside world, the state claims its education system is among the most advanced in Asia. Free for all, the slogans boast, the pride of socialism. The reality is far stranger and infinitely darker. Beneath the surface of this structure, beneath the anthem and the choreography of loyalty, exists an intricate web of secret institutions, elite academies, and ideological re-education camps that operate beyond public knowledge. Together, they form the invisible backbone of the regime's control. At the top are the special schools, institutions so guarded that most North Koreans have never even heard their names. These are where the children of the ruling elite, military officers, and party officials are sent. The walls are taller, the classrooms brighter, the equipment modern, imported computers, language labs, and even simulators disguised as educational tools. But the students there are not being prepared for freedom or leadership. They're being trained to become extensions of the system, diplomats who lie convincingly, hackers who infiltrate foreign networks, economists who manipulate trade data. Their purpose is not knowledge, it's camouflage. One of these institutions, according to defectors, lies in the outskirts of Pyongyang, the Kim Jong-il Political and Military Academy for Youth. Its existence isn't officially acknowledged. Students here learn international law and espionage under the guise of national defense studies. They're taught how to write perfect English letters of diplomacy and how to read foreign news without believing a word of it. To them, knowledge is a weapon, a controlled dose of truth injected only to serve the regime's global image. These young elites grow up knowing more than the average citizen, but believing less. Because belief is for the masses. Understanding is for the manipulators. The further down the hierarchy you go, the more the illusion crumbles. Beneath the elite schools are the provincial academies, where promising students from rural areas are sent to be molded into loyal functionaries. They live under harsher rules, cut off even from their families. Letters are censored, visits are limited. Many students never see home again. Those who fail to demonstrate absolute loyalty are sent to reform schools, correctional institutions disguised as educational centers. Their ideology replaces instruction entirely. Students spend hours copying out party slogans, confessing imaginary crimes, and writing essays titled, "My Eternal Gratitude to the Great Leader." The walls are lined with posters of Kim Il-sung, smiling with that same detached benevolence. For the students inside, each smile feels like a reminder that even their thoughts are not their own. But there is another layer still, one that is spoken of only in whispers among defectors and former officials. A system of ideological re-education camps for those who have strayed from purity. They are not officially schools, but they function like them, teaching lessons through deprivation. Students caught with foreign media, teachers who fail to report properly, or citizens suspected of ideological disobedience are sent to these places. There, education takes the form of endless labor and repetition. Prisoners are forced to chant slogans until their voices break. Long live the great leader. We will defend socialism to our last breath. They sleep on wooden floors, eat corn gruel, and memorize passages from Juche philosophy for recitation. Guards call it learning. The inmates call it breaking. One defector described these re-education camps as schools for forgetting, forgetting fear, forgetting desire, forgetting the self. The process begins with isolation and ends with submission. After months, sometimes years, they are released back into society, quieter, thinner, and infinitely more obedient. They return to classrooms as teachers or assistants, continuing the cycle they once suffered under. In North Korea, the most loyal servants of the state are often those who have survived its punishment. But the most haunting secret of all lies in the education of those who never appear in official records, the orphans. Known as the Kotjebi, These children wander the streets, scavenging for food. They are invisible to the regime, yet even they are not beyond its reach. Some are captured and placed in special orphan schools, where they are taught that their abandonment is proof of the leader's love, that he saved them from a cruel world. They are given basic education, but more importantly, they are taught gratitude. They learn to thank the regime for feeding them, even when the rice is moldy. They learn to sing songs of praise, even as their voices tremble with hunger. For these children, education is not just control, it's identity. Without the regime, they are nothing. The elite, meanwhile, live in a parallel world. Inside Pyongyang's privileged districts, schools for the children of high-ranking officials resemble foreign academies, marble floors, imported pianos, even swimming pools. Teachers here are carefully selected, many trained abroad in countries like China or Russia. But their role is not to open minds, it's to polish masks. They teach the children how to behave in front of foreigners, how to recite loyalty with charm. The students learn European manners, Western literature, always through the lens of superiority. Learn their language, one textbook reads, but never their soul. And yet, the children of privilege are not as free as they seem. The surveillance in these schools is more intense than anywhere else. Every room has hidden microphones. Every student is watched not only by teachers, but by peers assigned as informants. They live in a constant state of performance, smiling, praising, pretending. Even their essays are reviewed by political officers. Describe how the great leader inspires your studies, one prompt demands. Explain why you are grateful to live in our pure socialist paradise. To refuse such questions is unthinkable. To answer without enthusiasm is dangerous. So they learn to act, and in time, the acting becomes real. The structure of North Korea's education system extends far beyond the borders of the country. The regime has built schools abroad, in China, in Russia, even in parts of Southeast Asia, to educate the children of diplomats and spies. These international schools serve two purposes: to maintain ideological purity and to train future operatives. The students study global systems, economics, and foreign law, but always through the lens of Hushe. They learn how to blend in, how to speak like the world, but think like the regime. When they return home, they become the invisible ambassadors of control, fluent in deceit, loyal in heart. This duplicity extends to the portrayal of education for foreigners. On guided tours, visitors are often shown model schools in Pyongyang, perfectly choreographed performances where children sing songs, read from English textbooks, and smile for the cameras. The walls are painted in bright colors, the desks immaculate. Everything is rehearsed. What the visitors don't see are the back rooms, where the same children rehearse for hours before the arrival of guests, memorizing which questions to answer and which to ignore. After the foreigners leave, the smiles vanish. The chalkboards are wiped clean of English words. The illusion dissolves. There are also shadow classrooms, secret rooms within state buildings, where propaganda officers train teachers on new ideological materials. These sessions are not education, but conditioning. They last for days, with no rest, no private time. Teachers are drilled on the latest directives, forced to memorize new phrases, even new historical revisions. Sometimes, entire chapters of textbooks are rewritten overnight. A victory that never happened becomes truth by morning. A failure becomes triumph. This is how the regime rewrites not only its past, but the minds of its people. Within the walls of the elite universities, another secret thrives: the cyber education programs designed to weaponize intelligence. At Kimchak University of Technology and Mirim College, thousands of students are trained in programming, encryption, and digital warfare. These schools produce the hackers behind some of the world's most notorious cyber attacks. Trained from youth, told that their missions are acts of patriotism, they're taught that stealing from foreign banks is not theft, but justice. That disrupting global systems is revenge for the suffering of their nation. Their classroom exercises mimic real-world attacks, their projects monitored directly by military intelligence. It's the final evolution of North Korea's education, knowledge turned into weaponry. And while this hidden network thrives, the rest of the country decays. Schools in rural provinces crumble, roofs leak, children write lessons in dirt when paper runs out. In some villages, classes are held outdoors, beneath portraits that sway in the wind. Yet even here, the morning ritual remains unchanged. The students bow to the images. They sing, they recite. The illusion holds. Still the cracks widen. The smuggled flash drive, the whispered conversation, the teacher who dares to question quietly. These are the small fissures that the regime fears most. In the border towns, Chinese signals sometimes penetrate the radio waves. A student tuning a handmade radio might catch a foreign broadcast, a news story, a song. For a moment, the world beyond the mountains feels real. It's intoxicating, dangerous, transformative. The state knows this, which is why it's expanding control even further, not just over what students learn, but how they feel. Artificial intelligence systems are being tested to analyze facial expressions during patriotic ceremonies. New education tablets are being distributed, filled with propaganda apps disguised as study tools. The screen replaces the teacher, and the teacher becomes obsolete. Total control through technology, the next evolution of thought management. Yet no system, no matter how complete, can erase the human instinct for truth. Inside these forbidden academies and decaying schools alike, something continues to stir. Curiosity moves like a current beneath the surface, quiet but unstoppable. It begins with a glance, a question, a breath held too long during a chant. It grows in the hearts of those who sense that even perfect obedience cannot fill the emptiness that education has left behind. And somewhere within Pyongyang's silent classrooms, a teacher lowers her voice and tells her students, "There are other ways to learn." They look at her, afraid, uncertain, yet awake. For the first time, a lesson that belongs to them begins. There are no bells marking the end of class in North Korea's schools, only the fading of a ritual, a slow, collective stillness that settles after the final recitation. The children rise from their desks, bow to the portraits of their leaders, and step into the corridors where every wall, every sound, every breath has already been scripted. Education in North Korea does not end when the school day is over. It follows its students home. It lives in their parents' voices, in the posters on the street, in the rhythm of their footsteps. It becomes their language, their mirror, their prison. And yet, if you stand at the edge of one of those classrooms and listen closely, you'll hear something beneath the uniformity, the faint, irregular pulse of human thought, a hesitation before a pledge, a breath caught before a bow. These are small fractures in the regime's perfection, invisible to those who enforce it, but undeniable to those who feel it. The longer you look, the more the illusion unravels. You realize the secret education system of North Korea isn't just about teaching what to believe. It's about ensuring that people forget how to doubt. For decades, the regime has succeeded. The state's grip on learning has been so absolute, so intricately woven into daily life, that truth itself has become a foreign concept. To the average North Korean, education doesn't mean discovery. It means discipline. It means memorizing, obeying, enduring. It means survival. The same system that begins with nursery songs and patriotic coloring books ends with mandatory ideological study sessions for adults. There is no graduation, only the slow erosion of thought. But the world beyond the border has changed faster than the regime can conceal, and information, like water, has found its cracks. Smuggled USB drives filled with South Korean dramas or foreign documentaries travel across rivers wrapped in plastic and hidden in bags of rice. Radios tuned to forbidden frequencies whisper into the night. On one side of the border, these are ordinary technologies. On the other, they are revelations. A single clip from a foreign broadcast can undo years of indoctrination. A single image of a modern city can dissolve the illusion of North Korea's paradise. For some students, this awakening begins innocently. They watch a film where people laugh without fear, eat without ration cards, speak without permission. At first, they think it's fiction, propaganda from the enemy. But then the questions begin. Why do those people look so free? Why do they smile when no one is watching? Why does their world seem full of color, while ours fades to gray? In those moments, doubt is born, fragile, trembling, but alive. And in North Korea, doubt is the most dangerous form of education. Teachers sense it. They can see the change in their students' eyes, a flicker, a curiosity that wasn't there before. Some respond with stricter control, demanding louder chants, longer hours, more essays of gratitude. Others quietly protect what they see. A sympathetic teacher may pretend not to notice a student's silence during the anthem. She may look away when a notebook hides a forbidden drawing. These are small rebellions, but they are all the more powerful for being invisible. In a system built on obedience, mercy itself becomes resistance. There are places within North Korea where education has begun to mutate in ways the regime cannot fully contain. Border towns, where Chinese commerce leaks across the river, have become informal classrooms of forbidden knowledge. Traders speak of the outside world. Smuggled devices circulate among trusted families. A few daring teachers find ways to explain mathematics and science as they truly are, not as propaganda dictates. They do so carefully, using metaphors and coded language. A formula becomes a parable. A physics problem becomes a question of faith. Their students listen, not realizing they are learning something radical, truth. Even within the elite universities where control is strictest, the state cannot erase the paradox it has created. The young elites trained in foreign languages and international relations sometimes glimpse the world's contradictions through diplomatic archives, through whispered exchanges with outsiders, through data that slips through filters. They begin to see that North Korea's narrative of superiority is unsustainable. Some compartmentalize the revelation, performing loyalty by day while quietly unraveling inside. Others, when opportunity arises, defect. And in their testimonies, the truth surfaces again and again. The deeper their education, the more profound their disillusionment. For those who never escape, knowledge becomes a kind of torment. They know enough to see the cracks, but not enough to break through them. The same lessons that once promised clarity now imprison them in contradiction. A student reads about self-reliance while knowing their country depends on smuggled aid. A teacher recites that the leader provides for all while her child goes hungry. Each unspoken truth adds weight to the silence, until the silence itself becomes unbearable. There is a story whispered among defectors about a young man who once studied at Kim Il-sung University. He had been a model student, disciplined, obedient, unquestioning. But one day, while repairing a power line in the university's library, he found a fragment of an old foreign book hidden behind a wall panel. It was a page from a Western history text, yellowed, fragile, filled with words he could barely translate. It spoke of revolutions, of people overthrowing kings. He kept the page hidden in his jacket for years, reading it whenever he could. He said that single page changed everything. It wasn't what it said, he later explained after his escape. It was what it made me feel, that there was another way to live. That's what education at its truest form has always been, the awakening of possibility. And that's precisely what the regime fears most, because once the mind recognizes possibility, it can never again accept captivity. That's why the system must remain total. That's why every school, every teacher, every textbook must serve the same God, control. But control is a fragile deity. It requires constant worship, constant vigilance. The regime's greatest fear is not invasion or famine or even dissent. It is knowledge itself, uncontrolled, unfiltered, unapproved. A single idea can spread faster than fear, and when it does, it erodes everything. In recent years, despite the government's efforts, traces of outside education have begun to infiltrate the country through subtle channels. Refugee networks smuggle not only food and medicine, but knowledge. Digital textbooks, scientific articles, even translated Wikipedia entries. In rural areas, farmers pass around USB drives containing basic lessons in math and agriculture. They call it ghost education. Invisible to the regime, but growing quietly beneath it. These lessons aren't revolutionary. They teach how to purify water, how to measure soil, how to use solar panels. But each one carries an implicit message. The world outside exists, and it makes sense. That message is dangerous because it restores something the regime has worked for generations to erase: self-trust. The belief that truth can be discovered, not dictated. That knowledge belongs to the mind, not the state. Once that seed is planted, even in secret, it cannot be destroyed. It may hide beneath layers of fear and propaganda, but it endures, and in time it grows. Someday, perhaps, that growth will reach critical mass. Perhaps it already has. Perhaps right now, in a silent classroom beneath a portrait of Kim Il-sung, a student is reading words not written by the regime. Perhaps a teacher, weary of lies, is choosing to remain silent instead of repeating them. Perhaps a parent, once terrified, is whispering the truth to their child before sleep. These moments will never appear in any textbook, but they are happening, and they are the beginning of the end of unthinking belief. When outsiders imagine the fall of North Korea's regime, they often picture revolution. Soldiers defecting, borders collapsing, the leader fleeing his palace. But it may not happen that way. It may begin quietly, not with fire, but with understanding. With a question whispered in a classroom, with a book smuggled across a river, with a teacher deciding not to correct a student who wonders, why are we told that we have nothing to envy when I can see that we do? If there is hope for North Korea, it lies not in its politics, but in its pupils. The same children who once recited the regime songs will one day be the ones who stop singing. They will remember the lessons that made no sense, the hunger that was too sharp to ignore, the lies that couldn't explain the world. They will carry the scars of obedience, but also the remnants of curiosity. And one day, curiosity will outweigh fear. Until then, the classrooms remain, the portraits remain, the songs echo through corridors, unchanged. But beneath the surface, the silence has changed. It is no longer the silence of obedience, it is the silence before the first question, the stillness before the mind awakens, the pause before history turns. Somewhere in the north, a bell rings, clear, distant, almost human. A child looks up, uncertain why it feels different this time. Perhaps it is nothing, or perhaps at last it is the sound of learning returning to its true purpose. The regime will not hear it yet, but someday it will, because education, even when weaponized, cannot forever suppress its own nature. It is the seed of freedom planted inside the soil of control, and no matter how deep the darkness, no matter how long the silence, the mind always remembers the light.